If human history were a big book, then we today can only read the very last page. What do I mean by this? Well, in today's video, I'll show how ancient humans were far more intelligent than we thought, why this intelligence may have manifested in different ways than we assume, and how we've forgotten the vast majority of our human story. Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Michael. I have a degree in ancient history, and on this channel, we discuss the unexplainable mysteries of our past. Let's get into it. In our modern world, we build cities, sequence DNA, fly to space, and create machines that think. We've come an incredibly long way. But when you consider it, we did this remarkably quickly. According to the traditional view of history, civilization began around 3000 BC with the invention of writing. This means that all of this, everything we call civilization, it only really started around 5000 years ago. Now, 5000 years may sound like a lot of time, but it really isn't when you look at our human story. Modern humans have been around for at least 315,000 years, but probably longer. This means that our entire recorded history only covers about 1% of the time we've been on the planet. 99% of our story is gone, missing, forgotten. There isn't just a gap in human history, there's a gigantic black hole. Now, our brains love beginnings, we love stories. We like to think of history as one linear journey, from nomadic people in the Stone Age to the invention of farming, the early civilizations, and so on. We look for clear progress at each stage, all of it building up to eventually reach us in our advanced, affluent, modern society. But why is the first chapter of this story so huge? Why did we live as nomadic hunter-gatherers for over 300,000 years, and then only at the very end settle down and form civilizations? What's happened during this earlier time that makes up the vast majority, 99% of our history? Well, the truth is, we don't really know. When analysing history from before humans started writing, the best we can do is try and interpret evidence left behind in the archaeological record. But that's all it is, interpretation, and the further back you go, the less and less evidence there is to choose from. To try and understand human prehistory, historians traditionally divide it up into three categories: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic, i.e. the Old, Middle, and New Stone Ages, each marking major shifts in how humans lived. However, the Old Stone Age, the Paleolithic, is by far the largest of these, stretching from around 3.3 million years ago, when human ancestors made the first stone tools, all the way to roughly 10,000 BC, when agriculture began to take root. So pretty much our entire history falls into the Paleolithic. The conventional explanation thus suggests that for the vast majority of our existence, humans stayed at more or less the same level of progress. We're meant to believe that nothing much of note happened during this entire stretch of time, just endless generations of hunter-gatherers chipping stones, making fires, and chasing animals. No major leaps, no big ideas, just a slow, quiet grind through the ages. But if agriculture was so important, why did it take so long to invent? Why did nobody invent it for 300,000 plus years, and then multiple places invented it at basically the exact same time, in completely unconnected locations? The traditional argument here is that it happened because the climate got warmer, but the climate has been warm many times before during the human story. None of this makes sense. So are we really getting the full picture? How can we be so sure that humans didn't achieve incredible things that we've simply forgotten? And how do we know they didn't advance in different ways to our own civilization? What if this is just a case of recency bias, our psychological tendency to view recent events as more significant, simply because they're closer to us in time? We view the last 10,000 years quite clearly because we have a lot of evidence, but as we go back deeper, the evidence starts to fade. So we naturally assume that everything must have been dull, stagnant, or primitive by comparison. But that's not necessarily true. Just because we don't have written records from the Paleolithic doesn't mean nothing meaningful was happening. It might just mean we've lost the evidence, or haven't been looking at it in the right way. Now, some people are probably thinking, what are you talking about? We did make leaps during the Paleolithic. We got smarter, but this theory, while popular, is almost certainly false. The old idea of the cognitive revolution, that humans miraculously suddenly got smart around 50,000 years ago, doesn't really hold up. There's plenty of evidence of humans displaying symbolic intelligence way back to the very beginning of our species, and I made a whole video about this, which you can check out on my channel if you want to learn more. But what's even more astounding is that this isn't limited to Homo sapiens. Recent evidence has also emerged showing that other hominids, like Neanderthals, display
symbolic intelligence, and were likely just as smart as us, creating cave paintings, burying their dead, and building stone circles. Homo erectus were even building boats and sailing across oceans almost a million years ago. The old idea that different human species were dumb brutes is completely wrong.
So modern humans have been around for at least 315,000 years, capable of advanced symbolic thought. Coupled with this, other human species also displayed intelligence throughout this period and earlier. That is a huge amount of time, especially when you consider what we've achieved in only the last 5,000 or 6,000 years. So did we really spend 99% of our history as nomadic hunter-gatherers? Did basically nothing happen until the invention of agriculture?
I would argue almost certainly not. I would argue there is a huge hole in human history, a 99% shaped hole that we cannot account for, and that opens up a whole range of possibilities. In fact, we're already seeing evidence that early humans weren't necessarily nomadic. A fascinating site, known as the Colombo structure, indicates that early hominins may have had a settled lifestyle, completely challenging the prevailing view that Stone Age humans were nomadic, and this structure is over 400,000 years old, even predating the earliest Homo sapien remains. So if early humans were already living in settled communities at this time, that changes everything.
But then the next question is, what is actually possible? What could prehistoric humans feasibly have been getting up to?
Many argue that if sophisticated cultures had developed in prehistory, we would know. We would be able to find evidence of this, and as we don't, then it's impossible it happened. But I would disagree. As I covered in previous videos, when you get up to large time gaps, say 100,000 years, which is still the most recent third of human history by the way, almost all trace of human activity would disappear. All metal, plastics, concrete, glass, etc. from our civilization would erode in a few centuries, at most a few millennia. If we disappeared tomorrow and stopped maintaining our structures, there would be basically nothing left of us in 100,000 years. And there's billions of people now who have created a lot of stuff. Add to this the fact that early human cultures were likely much smaller, and most of their creations were probably made of wood, plant fiber, or other perishable materials, it's not surprising almost everything they created would have vanished over time, erased by nature. Add to that the changing of sea levels. Coastlines have always been the most logical place for humans to settle and build cultures. We see this throughout recorded history, but sea levels have changed drastically while humans have been on the planet, and much of the prime real estate of prehistory is now underwater. New evidence has emerged proving that Homo erectus lived on the Sunda Shelf, which isn't really surprising but displays just how much of our history may be hidden under the ocean. Add to this the fact that we've only uncovered a tiny fraction of the archaeological record, and at those sites we have found, only a small portion have been properly excavated. Even within these excavated sites, organic materials often degrade before they can be studied. The entire Sahara Desert was green and lush during the last ice age, but no excavation has been done there. Who knows what mysteries are hiding beneath the sand? And add to this the cataclysmic history of the Earth. We know that human societies are very vulnerable to tiny climate shifts. Just look at the Bronze Age collapse, the year without summer, or the Little Ice Age. Relatively small climate events that have had huge impacts on human society. But when you look at some of the events that Earth experienced in prehistory, you start to realize our species have been through many hugely disruptive events that also had the potential to wipe the archaeological record clean. Major human achievements could easily have been lost to time. And on top of all of this are factors like disease, famine, and war, all of which have devastated human societies in recorded history. Epidemics can erase populations in a matter of years, ending entire ways of life. If these forces have left such a mark on recent civilizations, surely it's possible they erased countless other cultures long before history began to be written. There are literally so many ways that sophisticated societies of prehistory could have been destroyed, and all trace erased.
So why are we so confident in saying that nothing happened, that no sophisticated cultures rose and fell in prehistory? And why do we attack people who dare to make such suggestions? Well, I think it all comes down to a certain arrogance of our modern perspective.
We view the past through the prism of our own civilization. We think we know it all, but in reality, the last 5,000 years are just a blip in the human story. We think in our age of science and reason we have everything figured out, and that we can answer all the questions. But we can't. Science only takes us so far. We still can't explain the most fundamental questions of consciousness and self-awareness. Heck, we can't even explain how ancient builders constructed some of the most famous monuments from the past. In reality, there are possibly a whole range of breakthroughs and wisdom that ancient humans achieved, but we have subsequently lost and forgotten.
Something I always come back to when grappling with this idea is the stars.
In the modern world, we don't really look at the stars anymore. Sure, we know they're there, but they're clouded by light pollution, high-rise buildings, etc. But for almost all of human history, humans would have stared up clearly at the stars every single night. Ancient cultures all over the world built monuments aligned with them, from the pyramids of Egypt to Stonehenge, the temples of the Maya to those found on Malta. Precise astronomical knowledge is literally carved into the stone. These weren't random alignments, they tracked solstices, equinoxes, and celestial cycles with stunning accuracy. Watching the skies was a shared human obsession, a lost form of knowledge, one built into the very bones of ancient architecture.
But besides what they may or may not have constructed, maybe we should be asking a different question. We obsess over what ancient people built, but maybe we should be asking, what did they think? How did they see the world?
Our modern view of intelligence is mostly technical, logic, data, engineering, but early humans may have had a different kind of intelligence. They likely had a far superior understanding of landscapes, weather, migration routes, astronomical intelligence of star tracking, lunar cycles, solstice alignment, and the effects of the cosmos on the human body. Aboriginal Australians used constellations not just to navigate the land, but to teach moral law. Our ancestors likely had sophisticated symbolic or mythic intelligence, i.e. the ability to encode knowledge into stories, rituals, and metaphors. The San Bushmen of Africa told tales that mirrored lunar rhythms and ecological cycles. This wasn't primitive, it was a sophisticated, symbolic way of knowing.
It's also becoming increasingly clear that ancient humans may have spent far more time in altered states of consciousness than we do today, whether through trance, rhythmic song, or the use of psychoactive plants.
These weren't just recreational, they were often central to spiritual practice, healing, and even knowledge transmission. In many early cultures, altered states were a bridge to the divine, a way to access insight, creativity, and meaning beyond the ordinary waking mind. These states might have helped them see patterns, encode knowledge, or solve problems in ways we can't measure. Experiences that are now sidelined or worse, completely outlawed in modern society. But this has been a central part of the human story for literally hundreds of thousands of years.
What if those states of mind were vital to early human societies, to their teaching systems, and now we've completely lost access to them? What if we're missing fundamental aspects of knowledge that our ancestors spent millennia cultivating, that we've since sidelined and deemed unimportant in our modern materialistic worldview?
We tend to assume that without writing, knowledge was crude or easily lost, but oral cultures developed incredibly sophisticated memory systems. We can see this from the Polynesians, who navigated vast oceans by memory, the West African griots, who preserved centuries of genealogy, and the Australian songlines encoded maps, laws, and myth into the very rhythm of the land. I think we've lost more than structures. I think we've lost entire mental operating systems, deleted from history.
We picture history as linear: hunter-gatherers, farmers, cities, science, us. But what if it wasn't a straight line? What if humanity explored other directions that left fewer ruins but were no less advanced? Maybe the mystery isn't just where are the lost cities. Maybe it's what kind of humans were we for 99% of our existence? And what did we know that we've now forgotten? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel.